$80 million was spent the last time Wisconsin held an election for governor in 2014. That's twice as much as 4 years prior. And some are predicting that this year's race for governor will top $100 million.
That's almost as much as Aaron Rodgers is going to make.
Yeah. Good thing he's not advertising, huh? He could take over the race.
Yeah, well, if Aaron Rodgers ran for governor, it wouldn't be a competition anymore. I think he'd win in a landslide. He'd make Wisconsin great again.
Can he make the Packers great again?
Well, hasn't he?
Well, he's kept the Packers great until he got injured last year. Then it was a disaster.
You can't blame Aaron Rodgers for getting injured.
Well, in the 2018 race for governor, in just the first week since the primary, in fact, when the Democrats picked Tony Evers to run and challenge Republican incumbent governor Scott Walker.
Trash-talking Tony.
Trash-talking Tony, and, well, what do you got for Walker?
Weasley Walker.
You're better than Trump on these nicknames. According to the story we just had in the paper a week ago, more than $7 million was spent in advertising in just the week after the primary. Also, according to the AP, the spending has been about 2-to-1, either by or favoring the incumbent Governor Walker, which isn't that surprising. A lot of times the incumbent has more money, and a lot of times the Republican does.
And they're really just stretching right now. They haven't really even warmed up the ad machines yet.
Yeah, so this is like the good morning yawn, like when you like just wake up in the morning and go, that's about all it is.
It's spring training for ad season.
Today on Center Stage, we're going to play some more ads. We did this earlier in a podcast, a month or two ago. We're going to do it again because now it's really heating up, particularly in the race for governor. We're going to look at that today on Center Stage with Milfred and Hands, the Wisconsin State Journal's political podcast from the sensible center of Wisconsin politics. I'm Scott Milford, the editorial page editor for the Wisconsin State Journal.
And I'm Phil Hands. I'm the editorial cartoonist for the Wisconsin State Journal.
And we are 50% of the Wisconsin State Journal editorial board.
The better-looking 50%.
All right, so we don't have a high opinion of campaign ads. They're usually misleading, if not outright false.
They are the worst way to get information about a candidate.
Nonetheless, we are again podcasting about them because they are so omnipresent if you have a digital screen. You don't even have to watch TV, I've noticed, because I don't watch a lot of TV, but I'm hearing them on the radio. I'm seeing them on my phone and digital screen and Twitter and Facebook and other places.
Even on madison.com.
This time of year is a great time of year for TV news stations because they get a lot of these ads, millions and millions of dollars of ads. Radio stations, they like this. We don't really get many political ads, certainly not in print, but we're starting to get more digitally.
In a certain way, the TV ads, the campaign ads, they sort of subsidize the TV stations so they can do that hard-hitting investigative journalism about why puppies are cute and what medicines will kill you next.
Yeah, and a squirrel that looks like Abraham Lincoln. That's a Simpsons joke.
You don't
know that one? I thought you knew them all.
I haven't heard that one, no.
Okay.
I don't remember that one. I'm sure I've heard it. I don't remember it.
All right. Well, why don't we go to the first ad? We're going to listen to 6 ads and comment on them related to the race for governor, Republican incumbent Scott Walker versus Democrat Tony Evers. The first ad, let me get my...
It's called, what you sent me was called Unprotected.
Yeah, and this is an ad.
It's not about condoms or
well, it kind of could be.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they called it that for no reason.
For no reason.
It's not just about whether kids are protected, I don't think. But this is by the Republican Party of Wisconsin running this ad favoring Governor Walker, who is the leader of the party.
Parents and school officials asked Superintendent Tony Evers to revoke the license of teachers who preyed on our kids. One teacher viewed and shared pornographic images at school. Another used Snapchat to ask her student to have sex in a storage closet. Yet another teacher was caught with his pants down in the classroom. State Superintendent Tony Evers had the power to revoke their licenses, but he refused, leaving our kids unprotected.
What a horrible guy!
That nasty Tony Evers. I thought he liked kids.
That's what I thought he was an educator and such. But apparently he is pro kids being molested in school.
Yeah, apparently, now these were just a handful of cases. And we did pull the analysis by PolitiFact, which is a Pulitzer Prize-winning website that checks statements by mostly politicians and groups advertising. And this is the third ad going after Tony Evers on this subject. The first two were deemed mostly false and half true. And when they look back at the evidence, what they found was that Tony Evers didn't think he could legally fire the guy. And subsequently, the arbitrator said he couldn't fire the guy in the first instance. And then two courts said he could not fire the guy. And then he pushed to change the law so that they could fire teachers who view pornography at school. Now, that doesn't mean Tony Evers couldn't have tried to fire him. He could have. He decided not to because he didn't think he could legally. In the end, it seems like he was right on that.
Okay, so he might have been right, but he didn't. So the Republicans would argue that he didn't try hard enough to fire these bad acting teachers.
Yeah, and there's the other two cases too. And I think in that Beloit case, I was just reading,
which is the Snapchat sex in the closet case.
Yes, and I was just reading an Associated Press story, and then there was a Beloit Daily News story on that too, in which there's a lot of gray area on that case because it was one message sent. Nobody's seen what that message is.
Because Snapchats disappear.
It's she said, the teacher was a woman, 23, I believe. It's a she said, he said. She denies it. She left the district. She's not in teaching anymore. So I guess you can judge from that whatever you want. But in the end, the local authorities did not have enough evidence to press any kind of
charges against
charge. So this is kind of a fringe issue.
And this is salacious. I will say as a parent, so a lot of these ads run when my son likes to watch American Ninja Warrior, which is like this show where guys do these cool obstacle courses. My son loves the show. We watch it as a family together. And these ads run during the show, and it's like, had sex in a closet. And it's like, my 9-year-old son doesn't need to see this kind of stuff. And like we watch what he watches. We try and make sure he's not seeing inappropriate stuff, but we can't necessarily turn off the commercials that are campaign commercials about our government and our democracy. Yeah. And it's like inappropriate for kids to be watching these commercials.
Yeah, when I watch a lot of these ads, I almost find them humorous. I have sort of a different reaction to them. I just think of the dark voice and the imagery, and it's just absurd and extremely difficult to take seriously.
But I'm just thinking of as
for a kid,
as
it's
a parent.
scary.
Well, not even scary, but like he's 9. Maybe we're too protective, but we don't let him watch movies with like lots of sex and violence in them and stuff like that. And talking about pornographic images being shared with students and having sex in closets is sort of a little risque for my kids.
Yeah, the broader point here that the Republican Party is trying to make, which is partially true, is that the Democrats tend to favor the teachers' union more than the Republicans do. And the teachers' union has been one of the biggest supporters of the Democratic Party going back decades, in the same way that the manufacturers have been one of the biggest supporters of the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's some truth to, okay, Tony Evers is more with the teachers.
He cares more about the teachers union than he does about the students. That's what they're trying to say.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to say.
And there's probably a little bit of truth to that. I don't know.
The thing is, though, in the primary, you had one of the Democrats criticizing Tony Evers for working with these conservative school boards in rural school districts that he led as a superintendent.
I guess the superintendent of schools is often diametrically opposed to the teachers. If you're running a school, if you've come from the management side of the school, you're not necessarily in bed with the teachers union.
Right. You would be negotiating on behalf of the school board against the union, or I guess you could say with. I mean, it depends on how you view the negotiations, but right, he was a teacher and came up through the teaching ranks, but for most of his career he was an administrator, meaning, yes, he would be in management,
You wouldn't say that like the CEO of the company is in bed with the labor unions.
Yeah. And what a lot of this, though, misses, I think, is, of course, which our reporters and our editorials will be commenting on extensively coming up this fall, are the larger issues in public education. I mean, this is a real fringe issue, and I think some of the bigger issues are that a whole bunch of especially black students in cities like Madison are not graduating.
Yeah, but
and what
but
are
do
we
those
doing?
black students, do they vote? Does it really matter? Does looking out for the future of people in the state, is that really an important issue, or is it just scandalous, salacious stories about sex in closets?
Well, and what they're trying to do with this ad is push a certain number of people who might not otherwise vote to vote.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're trying to scare some people away from the polls and make them feel like they don't even want to vote because all these guys are crooked.
One thing about this ad that I liked in particular is there's the discussion of the guy, the teacher caught with his pants down, and you can't see it because this is radio, or this is the power of our podcast. But the image on the screen is that like a guy with his belt kind of getting unbuckled.
Yeah.
I don't know whose belt is that. Which poor sap did they get to sort of unbuckle his belt a little bit for the stock footage for that ad?
Well, you get a belt model.
You get a belt model?
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong business. I could have been a belt model all these years.
In this next ad, this is essentially a response. This is by the Greater Wisconsin Committee running an ad saying that Tony Evers will always put the safety of our children first. And lo and behold, the Greater Wisconsin Committee, guess who's a big funder of them? The Teachers Union and other unions. Let's run this one.
Would you trust a career politician or a lifelong educator? After 25 years in office, Scott Walker is desperate to stay in power, so he's attacking Tony Evers and not telling the truth. Tony Evers would never put our children at risk. When the law stopped Tony Evers from revoking a teacher's license for viewing pornography, Tony worked with lawmakers from both parties to change the law so offenders could be kicked out of the classroom. Tony Evers, putting our children's safety and the truth first.
At the end there, he's holding a baby. He loves
wait
kids.
a minute, this guy is great.
He loves kids.
He's holding a baby, and the mom is there too. Just be like, "Oh, Tony likes my baby. He loves kids."
He didn't kiss the baby though, which is a cliche.
Interestingly enough, the same PolitiFact website said that this ad was half true.
Half true means it's also half false.
They said that the state law in place at the time didn't actually stop Evers from trying to revoke the license. Evers could have initiated revocation proceedings, and then the teacher could have challenged that. So this gets back to he could have been more aggressive. Ultimately, it appears he was right that the courts wouldn't have let him do that.
Okay.
And it also says in the second part of the claim, he did work with lawmakers to change the law, but didn't change the law as the words on the screen said. So even that ad, which is kind of coming back and saying, no, you're wrong.
It's also a little bit wrong, too.
It's also got a little topspin on it, yeah.
I like the music in that ad. It starts off all dark and dour and Scott Walker's so bad, and then it goes to do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Yeah.
Tony Evers is the best.
And this next ad is by Americans for Prosperity. I like prosperity.
Scott, I'm opposed to prosperity. Not being prosperous builds character.
This is a group that was founded by the Koch brothers. They own Georgia Pacific, so they have some interest in our state. There's a big paper-making state here, especially in the Fox Valley. Their group paid for this ad.
Thanks to his pro-growth policies, Governor Walker has invested millions in our schools and received a lot of praise. A pro-kid budget, an important step forward. Commitment to K-12 education is good news. So who said those things? Tony Evers. But now that Evers is running for office, he's trying to take back his praise. The truth? Governor Scott Walker is improving Wisconsin education, and Tony Evers knows it.
It sounds like they had a different person say Tony Evers' names. Like, and who said that? Tony Evers.
They're trying to make him look sort of evil, and the best they could do is they got him in a dark wool coat and a speckled scarf. But it's still Tony Evers. He doesn't look like he could step on an ant necessarily.
Neither Tony Evers or Scott Walker, you can try as hard as you want, neither of them will ever look menacing. I mean, they just are not tough people. They don't look tough. They don't look like they're going to devour little puppies or anything like that.
Yeah.
They'd look like kind of nice guys, and Tony Evers is like a kindly old grandfather, and Scott Walker's sort of like the doofus kid next door. I don't know. I mean, they don't look tough and mean.
What this ad really gets to is that in that last budget, the governor did increase spending on schools. Evers has said he basically adopted my budget, so of course I liked it.
Yeah.
And he did it because he knew he was going to run for election, and he had cut it in the past.
Yeah.
But now you flip that around, and Evers will say, yeah, he had these giant cuts in the past. What Evers ignores there is that a lot of those cuts were offset by Act 10 forcing the teachers to pay more for their retirement and for their health benefits. Mm-hmm. So did that really hurt the kids in the class, those cuts, or was it more just a ding on teachers and their pay? I think it's more of the latter.
You're getting too deep into the weeds here, Scott. People don't have time to look at all this stuff.
There was a nice girl in the picture there with the governor, by the way. So they're all for kids.
They're all for
kids.
ads.
This next ad, this one's by the Democratic Party, and this one relates to Harley Davidson.
And it features Trump prominently.
When I see Scott Walker with his little motorcycle, he's always riding like, gets off a bike like he's a big tough guy. And he doesn't look like a motorcycle guy to me, I'm sorry.
President Trump backing a boycott of Harley Davidson.
Now President Trump says Harley Davidson won't be able to sell its products in the U.S. without paying a tax.
What does Governor Scott Walker have to say about the implication of a boycott on one of Wisconsin's major manufacturing companies?
Have you told him to stop?
Well, the best thing right now is for us to focus on the trade policy.
Did the governor say if he ever talked to the president directly about Harley?
I don't know that anybody's going to tell him one way or the other what to do on tweeting on any subject.
We asked him, and all he said was he's on the same page as the president.
One of the best ways for that to happen is for us to do what the president himself talked about.
All right, what you can't hear on that ad is at the end, the words come over the screen. Scott Walker has never stood up to Donald Trump. He won't stand up for Wisconsin businesses. It's time for new leadership that will stand up for Wisconsin. That's what the words are saying. And you're seeing at the start of the ad, you see Scott Walker riding on Harleys and then kind of going up and shaking hands to some big burly motorcycle dudes.
I bet Tony Evers looks much tougher on a bike than Scott Walker does.
They are both kind of Michael Dukakis in a tank when you put them on a motorcycle. I suspect Walker looks a little more at home than Tony Evers, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. I haven't seen Evers on a cycle.
Maybe he rides like one of those little scooters around town or something like that.
Well, I know he has said he bicycles a lot, so
figures.
He would look fine on a bike. I could see him in spandex.
Oh yeah,
thin guy.
That's a disturbing image. Thank you, Scott, for ingraining that in my forehead.
Well, anyway, that's of course a hit on Walker for not standing up to Trump in defending a great Wisconsin company, Harley Davidson, and of course the background on that is that Trump slapped tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into the country, which raised the cost to Harley to make its motorcycles. Then Europe slapped retaliatory tariffs on motorcycles sent overseas. That increased Harley's cost to sell motorcycles overseas. Consequently, Harley announced it was going to have to move some of its jobs overseas. So Trump blasted Harley, and Walker really didn't stand up to defend them.
No.
And the tariffs is just such an awkward issue for the Republicans because the Republicans, including Scott Walker, have been free traders forever. And now they've got to deal with a president who not only is...
So it's basically a democratic trade policy.
Basically, but he's more aggressive about it than the Democrats would ever be.
He's more kind of pro-Build America than Tammy Baldwin or Mark Pocan, who have both hated trade deals in the past. So.
Yeah, and he's basically branding Harley as a traitor and saying he supports a boycott of them because they're being business people like he used to be and making smart business decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still going to make...
Based on Trump's dumb trade policies.
Yeah, I mean, they're still going to make a whole bunch of motorcycles in Wisconsin. It's just... If there's going to be these negative tariffs when they ship some overseas, they might build some of those going overseas instead to avoid the tariff.
Yep.
I think that might be effective for the Democrats because the economy is doing so well I mean, incumbents almost never lose when the economy is this strong. So in a way, this ad is kind of chinging that and saying, hey, the president is hurting this great Wisconsin company with these tariffs, and the governor won't do anything about it, and this is going to cost jobs.
I wonder if the Democrats should just run ads that has Donald Trump dissing Scott Walker. You know, I mean, because there are a lot of people that just love Donald Trump in this state. You know, he won our state. Is having ads with Donald Trump saying Scott Walker's weak and wimpy, is that good for the Democrats? Because the ad kind of starts off like that, but then it goes to, and Scott Walker won't stand up to Donald Trump. Well, some people don't want Scott Walker to stand up to Donald Trump. They like Donald Trump the way he is.
These next two ads are by the candidates' campaigns themselves. This is by Scott Walker. It's called We're Just Getting Started.
Hi, I'm Scott Walker. Wisconsin's on a roll. Lower taxes, more money in education, record low unemployment. And we're just getting started. Our plan reduces student loan debt for graduates who work in high-demand careers here in Wisconsin. It makes youth apprenticeship programs available to 7th and 8th graders, helps senior citizens stay in their homes, and makes it easier for working families to afford childcare. Together, we can keep Wisconsin working for generations to come.
What a nice guy.
He's run multiple positive ads about himself and really trying to moderate his image. I mean, these are all some proposals that he's putting forward.
They're all good things.
Trying to say that the government is going in to help old people, kids, students. He's not this arch right-wing guy. He's more of a moderate guy that we can all support.
We can all get behind Scott Walker. Yeah.
The final ad we're going to play is by Tony Evers.
Whose side is Scott Walker on? When Walker was running for president, he played politics and rejected millions in federal health care money that would have lowered costs for our families. Minnesota's governor took the funds. They made changes. Wisconsin families now pay nearly 50% more than Minnesotans for the same health care. It's not right. Scott Walker does what's best for himself. It's time for a change and a governor who will do what's best for us.
All right. Well, in that ad, Tony Evers, of course, is bringing up the governor's failed bid for president. That was sort of the low point of the governor's popularity.
It was a little embarrassing. He ran for president for about 6 weeks or something like that.
And he was sort of leading in the Golden Boy, and then he flamed out faster than any of them.
And burned through a ton of money.
And wasn't really around Wisconsin. And so that was the time when his popularity really got to its lowest point. So I think Tony Evers' ad there is trying to remind people about that low point and make them think, oh, yeah, that's right. He wouldn't take the... Now, in the ad, it says millions of dollars. It was actually hundreds of millions. I don't know why their ad guy didn't...
Yeah, it was a lot of money. It was like $800 million or something.
For once, an ad is sort of underselling its point. But, yeah, we could have got a whole bunch of money to pay for low-income people to get health insurance. Now, there's a whole nother side to that, which is those people that... You know, by not taking the money, some of those people could still get subsidies through the Obamacare marketplace. So it's not like we're not going to get any money from the feds if we didn't take that money. But a lot of states took that money.
I think you can make an argument, and maybe this is getting beyond the point of analyzing ads, but if I was a Democrat, I'd say, the argument really is that when Scott Walker was running for president, he wouldn't raise taxes to pay for our roads. He wouldn't take money for Obamacare. So we had to take all these. He made all these political decisions which hurt the state of Wisconsin for his greater ambitions. I think that's a winning selling argument for Democrats.
And in some of the other ads, they really are making the point on the bad roads. I think they've got a strong point there, and that's an issue that really resonates with rural voters.
So what's the big picture on these ads? We saw 6 ads. One point I like to make is, and Evers kind of breaks the mold on this one, his last ad, but oftentimes you'll get the governors' associations or the parties or the third-party groups, they do the really nasty, trashy ads.
Yeah.
And the campaigns themselves will say, wow, the candidate is such a nice guy. He cares about children. He cares about this. And they usually let somebody else do the dirty work in these ads.
Yeah. Well, as Lou Reed once said, don't believe half of what you read and none of what you hear. And I think you could
and you
probably
should believe less of what you see on TV.
Yeah. I think that's probably accurate when it comes to these ads.
They must be effective because campaigns raise tons of money, and they haven't figured out better ways to use their money than buying ad space.
It's just an incredible amount of money. Probably more than $100 million will be spent.
More than one Aaron Rodgers is going to be spent on this campaign.
Trying to affect maybe, I don't know, 30,000 voters who may or may not vote and might make the difference. By the way, if Aaron Rodgers did run for governor, would he run as a Republican or a Democrat? We know he was not in favor of milk, right?
He went vegan for a while, didn't he? And then he stunk for a couple of years.
Now he's a California guy, so we assume, the assumption would be, oh, he's a liberal. But do we actually really know much about Rodgers' politics?
He's really smart when he keeps his mouth shut about stuff. I mean, he occasionally will jump into stuff on Twitter and say something, but it's not easy to paint him either way. He does also advertise for Ford F-150 trucks.
Yes.
So that's not exactly he's not like he's touting Priuses or anything like that.
He also dates a NASCAR driver.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem very liberal.
No, it doesn't seem very liberal.
Well, we'll wait for 2022 to see if he's going to run.
He might not. He might not even run for governor in Wisconsin. He might just go for president.
He won't be retired yet, right? Doesn't his contract go for 4?
I think it's a 4-year contract.
So he could maybe slip in a campaign in 4 years.
Maybe he'll just use that last $35 million he's due or something like that on his campaign fund or something.
All of the music on our podcast is by Tube Tester, Madison's loudest band from the 1990s and beyond. Follow or subscribe to our podcast, Center Stage with Milfred and Hands, on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or SoundCloud.